Welcome to the short video presentation demonstrating the display and functionality of the eBook RADEC Magazine, an EPUB prototype document produced for the purpose of showing the advantages and limitations of the EPUB standard to the School of Astronomy and Astrophysics. So we'll start by actually showing how the eBook prototype displays on a desktop, the MacBook Pro, which was one of the production devices outlined in the report. For the desktop version, unfortunately we're unable to use Kobo, so we've actually looked at installing iBooks and Apple iBooks, that is, and also through the Firefox web browser we've actually installed the EPUB Reader add-on, the extension there, so we are able to test the eBook RADEC Magazine through both of those two e-reading applications there. Okay, so this is how the display, sorry that it is backwards, but this is how the publication displays in Apple iBooks. Okay, so we'll just do a quick review of all of the pages in the publication. Okay, so we've got the cover page, there's the instruction page, there's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 and chapter 4. Okay, so if we just jump back to the beginning of this ebook, we'll start with having a look at some of the capabilities and the advantages that we found, and also you could probably already see some of the limitations as well of the EPUB standard. So as you can see with the cover was basically a full image used to basically size the full display of the application viewport area. Now, as you can see, you might, it's probably a little bit hard to see, but we have a scroll bar at the side there, and if we click here, we're able to use the arrow keys on the keyboard to navigate up and down. Okay, through the development of the individual pages for this publication, to enable the content to be adjusted through responsive design techniques so it could actually display on different screen sizes, we had to use what we refer to as a scrolling or overflow feature through the styling there, so we could actually, if the content was viewed on the desktop, obviously we've got more space where we can put content, whereas when we're actually on an iPhone, the screen size gets smaller, and of course the content needs to be spaced out even more on the vertical. So you can see here we've got the scroll feature working again, which is allowing the user to scroll up and down. The purpose of the instruction page is to inform the end user about icons that can be used in the ebook itself, so they understand what those icons mean. I've also found that it would be beneficial to incorporate an additional page in ebooks, just instructing users on how to set up their e-reading devices and also e-reading softwares so they can better optimize the viewing performance, because we do find that some of the default settings of the e-reading applications do cause some limitations, and we'll have a look at that when we have a look at the other devices. So you can see here that the content is being laid out nicely, but we've got a bit of a styling shift, as you can see. So we tried to inject responsive design techniques into this design, and through the use of media queries, we're restyling the content to better suit the sizing of the page, or basically the viewport area. As you can see there, the default styling is getting applied first, and then it's being over or superseded by the media query style. Unfortunately, this does cause a bit of a delay with restyling the visual aesthetics, and we need to look at ways that we can get around that in future ebooks for the EPUB standard. We need to have a look at how we can actually still utilize the techniques involved with responsive design so that we can optimize those features and better use them in our publications. Okay, so you can see that the styling of the navigation is being restyled, and also the imagery content and the text content is getting scaled as well to compensate. Our navigation works as well, so we can actually jump to we can jump to the different navigations. All right. Okay, so we'll jump across now to the Firefox and have a look at how we went with displaying this in Firefox. So you can see this is the default display, and that's what I was talking about. So the default display does, like for example here we've got the table of contents coming up straight away when, it's probably, wouldn't be idealistic to have that coming up straight away. It would be better to allow the user to sort of, have that slide out when they're ready to use it, and really have the user focusing on the main graphic here for the cover. You can see that the actual sizing of the content is sort of central here, so we've got a lot of additional space outside here which is not being utilised, so it indicates that the styling here is not being resized very well on the first page. However, when we get to the second page, you can see that the styling that we had set up is actually taking effect quite nicely. Okay, so the image on the cover page wasn't styling as we'd expect to a large size. Okay, and then we've got the content. So you can see here the content has been shuffled around because of media queries used, so styling. And we also have additional margins, or if you like to call it padding, on the edges here. And you can see that some of the content is riding off on the right-hand side there. We're sort of losing a little bit of the navigation bar, but the main content is actually showing quite nicely. And as we keep navigating through, we can see how the content is getting restyled in this version or through this e-reading application. Navigation also still works. Okay, so the table of contents, I'll just demonstrate that as well. That's actually working quite nicely. And of course that was also available through iBooks, but we'll demonstrate that through one of the other devices there. Okay, so we'll flip over now to the iPad. Okay, so we found pretty much the same sort of occurrences with the advantages and limitations. Okay, so we'll start off with iBooks, since we started off with iBooks before. Okay, so we can see here, I tried to be a little bit faster this time. Sorry, we're getting a bit of a reflection there. So you can see that we can still scroll up and down. We've got the option. Okay, so it's a little bit more user-friendly, as you would expect, because it's on the handheld device and you don't have to use mouse and arrow keys. So, but what we're trying to demonstrate here is the usability of this file is actually working across different devices and also different reading applications. So instead of actually developing separate renditions of each separate renditions of the ebook itself, so making 3 different or 9 different versions, if you like to say, we've got one file that's doing all of it for us. All right, so you'll notice there that the same styling issues are happening there. They're flipping over. Okay, some of the content placement is also misaligning a little bit in the iBooks here. So this is the landscape view, and if we flip over to the portrait, we get the new styling working there with the media queries, so which is working quite nicely, and we can navigate back and forth through the chapters there. Okay. So overall, I think that the ebook is actually working its best. It's optimal in the iPad device there on both iBooks, and we'll have a look at Kobo in a moment as well. So we'll flip over to the EPUB reader this time, and this is where things start to, unfortunately, not work as well. So you can see here we've lost the background, okay, and also these are the default styling features that I talked about before. So it's normal for the user to swipe to the different page, but unfortunately here it's actually changing the brightness and contrast. So what we need to look at is basically ways to still optimize, all of the features in our ebook, at the same time getting the users to, I suppose, go ahead and predefine their settings in the EPUB reader so that they can, see this at the best viewing experience possible. All right, so we can navigate through. You can see that when we scroll, we start to sort of lose things here a little bit, and this is one of the limitations I found of using the EPUB reader, and we need to explore this further. Okay, so as you can see, as we go to the other pages, yes, we start to lose a lot of styling here. Okay, so there is definitely some work, further research required to maintain the content, its styling and visual aesthetics across multiple e-reading devices. Okay. All right, so, and if we flip over to the landscape, you can see how that's sort of working there. Okay. All right, moving on to Kobo now. Here we go. All right, so Kobo I found was very similar to iBooks. Down a bit, sorry. Okay, so if we scroll through, there we go. Just got to do it a little bit slower. Okay, so we can see here that Kobo. All right, and yes, when we're testing, it's normal for a developer to want to review things at a faster pace than what a normal user would read this, how they would read this. So, all right, so you can see that it's very similar, okay? And we also we have the table of contents as well. All right, this is also available in iBooks. We might just flip over again to iBooks just to demonstrate this again, that it is possible to have that table of contents. All right, so you can see it's very similar, okay? And the styling is actually working quite nicely. So just a quick look again at iBooks for the table of contents, and then we'll flip over to the iPhone. So here, all right, our table of contents is over here. All right, and we can have a look through and easily go to the pages that we want. So you can see that the table of content works slightly a little bit differently with iBooks, in that it gives a little thumbnail graphic for the actual page itself, which is quite nifty. Whereas in Kobo, it gives basically a list feature instead. All right, so flipping over lastly now to the iPhone. Okay, and we'll just demonstrate this very briefly. Okay, so iBooks, we're starting off with iBooks again. Okay, as you can see there, all right, the same styling is happening, but very similar. Placement of content, same interactive capabilities are happening there as well for us, and it's maintaining background colors and things like that as well. Okay, if we click, we get the table of contents at the top there as well, as you can see. All right, so very really good publication, and the users do have the ability to zoom in. Unfortunately, with Apple iBooks, it does have what we refer to as fixed layout, so you do require a set fixed pixel measurement width and height to display the content. It doesn't work with percentage values very well, so in this case it actually zooms the content in and out a little bit, so but it still allows the user to actually zoom in, zoom out, pinch and pull there to actually see the content quite nicely. Okay, flipping over to EPUB, just briefly, as you would expect, the EPUB reader is going to work very similar, okay, to what we had before. All right, a little bit smoother, I suppose, if you like to say, and the content is actually laying out a little bit nicer as well. So this was quite interesting to find, actually, that the EPUB reader that's on the iPad and the desktop are quite different in their support capabilities for CSS styling, or the styling of content. So yes, I found that really interesting, actually. And you'll also notice that it doesn't tend to have too many of these blank pages happening as well. So yes, there's still further research needed there. The EPUB grid itself, EPUB3 Grid, is a great website that I found through the development of this ebook, which will allow us to better understand the styling support across a number of different e-reading applications and devices, so we can again inject the universal styling so they work across all e-readers there and devices. All right, lastly, we'll go to Kobo. And as you would expect, Kobo is going to be very similar like it was on the iPad. Okay, so, all right, we've got our pages, very similar layout. Okay, so table of contents as well. Okay, and as you can see, yes, very similar functionality to iBooks there. Okay, where it zooms the content. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this video presentation. I hope you've enjoyed looking at what the capabilities are of the EPUB standard. Hopefully we can look at the standard more in depth through more studies, example files, so we can look at ways that we can incorporate that format, because as mentioned through the report, there is a very strong movement towards the EPUB standard, and using that format for universal e-publishing technology, digital e-publishing technologies, particularly for education. In regards to the interactive capabilities, animative capabilities, there seems to be still ongoing work there with the support for technologies like JavaScript and jQuery there. So in the interim, we can use styling, certain CSS styling, which is referred to as CSS3 styling, to generate some basic animations, but the more complex interactive and animated features need to be handled by jQuery and JavaScript, and that is something that the International Digital Publishing Forum is working towards in the standard. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Enjoy the rest of your day.